What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of The Black Experience. How is everyone doing? I hope everyone is enjoying their fall season. We are in fall now. We're in full swing. Halloween is upon us, and many fun things to come, y'all. Thank you so much. This is season 5. For all my returning viewers, I want to thank you guys so much for this journey. It's been 2 years exactly this month of this podcast journey, and I could not have gotten there without you guys. I didn't think I'd take it this far, so thank you all for your support. If you're a new viewer or listener listening to this, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in, taking the time out of your day to tune in. Today, y'all, as usual, I have a very special guest with me today. Today, y'all, I have someone who is a hip-hop educator, former executive director of Third Stone, which is a nonprofit that operates Bumbershoot, yes, the music festival, and has done a TED Talk before, which I think is completely cool, super cool. Without further ado, y'all, let's put our hands together and let's bring up the fresh professor, a.k.a. Mr. James Miles.
What up, what up, what up? How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Man, absolutely. How was that intro? That
was great.
I know I missed some things because you have so much on your resume.
Nah, it was good. That was great. Appreciate that.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
How's your morning been?
Morning's good. You know, early starts of the morning, talking to people, helping out some clients with some strategic planning. So, you know, the work I love to do.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supporting communities, for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can tell you're a coffee person. I saw the coffee in your hand. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, ever since I had kids, I have 1 cup of coffee a day. That's it. I never had coffee until I had kids, and now I can't quit.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm afraid that might be me. You know, I've said no to coffee all of college.
Yeah. Nah.
And so it might come. But every now and then I could use a Frappuccino. I love Frappuccinos.
See, that's too sweet for me. I like it black, like the soul of an Aryan, as Kendrick says.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, James, thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting because I connected. I found you through another person of mine that I had found, and I connected with him through a former professor of mine in high school.
What?
And he was like, because I was like, do you know any black individuals that I could interview that are in the greater Seattle area? Because I've graduated now from Western, and I want to know more people. And he shouted your name out, saw you on LinkedIn.
That's amazing.
Saw your TED Talk. I was like, oh, this is a big name. I'll see if I can do it.
No, I love that. I love that.
But I appreciate it. Let's start off a little bit with your background, if you want to.
For sure.
Tell us a little bit more about your background and how growing up in Chicago to you was in your career in education and the arts and the whole 9 yards.
Whole 9 yards. So I was raised in Chicago, you know, for most of my youth. I was born in actually Ohio, moved to Chicago when I was 2 months old. So I don't much remember my time in Ohio.
Yeah.
I had a pretty bad speech impediment as a kid and a stutter. So when I got to school, you know, I was kind of outcasted. I didn't want to talk very much. I was kind of a silent young person. I was in speech therapy a lot as a kid and started to literally and figuratively get my voice. My first memory, though, I think this feeds into what I do for a living. My first memory was having no sight. I had an operation on my eyes when I was like 4 years old.
Wow.
And part of that was I couldn't see for like a week, 2 weeks. And I just literally grappled around the house trying to figure out where to go, listening to my mom, listening to my dad, like, you're okay, you're okay. That informed so much of my experience as a young person, having to rely on my sense of touch and smell and hearing and feel, that when I could see again, it was like a whole new world opened up to me.
Right.
So I felt like, oh, I'm ready for the world. And my mom always jokes about this. And when she dropped me off at kindergarten my first day, I says, is this where I live now? Are you coming back? And she says, well, of course. And I said, oh, okay. Like, I was totally cool with never seeing my mom again. Like, I didn't care. And she's like, because my younger brother, who's 6 years younger than me, was definitely not that. You know, I was very much self-reliant as a kid and like, leave me alone, don't talk to me. I'm good. You know, I'm independent. I was a loner. Still kind of am a loner. So yeah, growing up in Chicago was great, man. You know, I was a huge Cubs fan, still a huge Cubs fan. After I got through my speech impediment, not through it, but actually I therapized my speech impediment, I started cracking a lot of jokes. You know, before I was really into physical comedy. One of my favorite movies is called Popeye with Robin Williams. And I love Robin Williams. I used to watch him on Mork and Mindy and then Popeye. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to make people laugh just by falling on the floor and making people crack up laughing. I didn't know I had a sense of humor, like verbally, until I was a bit older and would just say things and people would start cracking up. And I was like, oh, okay, there's something here. And then I went to the Goodman Theater and saw Paul Butler play Shylock in A Merchant of Venice. And Paul Butler is a black actor, and it was like amazing to see this black actor do Shakespeare. And I said, ooh, I can do that. Like linguistically challenging, using my words to convey a story through poetry. You know, this is around the same time where you had a little bit more lyrical poets coming out, like Rakim, Kool G Rap, KRS-One. So it was all speaking to me on different levels, performatively as a theater person, and then musically as a hip-hop head. So that just kept feeding my life. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And so when I knew I wanted to become an actor, I was taking classes at Second City, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Tried, auditioned, booked my first TV job in like 1994 on BET. Called Booking It Back to School with LL Cool J, Queen Latifah, and Dougie Doug.
You got to meet these people.
I got to meet them. Well, I got to meet Dougie Doug. LL Cool J and Queen Latifah were offset that day or that week. But I got to meet Dougie Doug and worked with him for a while. That was amazing. He taught me the ropes from an early age and what it meant to be an actor. You know, and at early age, I was like almost 20 years old, but still, it was my first TV role. But I was like, yes, this is it. So when I moved to New York, that was it. I knew I was going to become an actor. But Chicago shaped me and made me who I am. You know, I talked to a lot of people from Chicago, my brother included, Hannibal included, who were like willing to roll with the punches and define themselves not by anyone else, but by what they feel like is true to them. And I think that's the magic of Chicago. You know, that we have this city that has extremes, extreme cold, extreme heat. You have gangster disciples, you have vice lords. You have city of neighborhoods. White folks live in one neighborhood, black folks another, Mexicans another, Polish another, Italian another, small West Indian pocket. You have a gay neighborhood. Like it's very, very much a pocketed place. So when we interact, it's like, all right, how do we navigate the different societies and worlds we walk into? So when you leave Chicago, you are that much more prepared to tackle the world because you face so much discernment in like how to go through one neighborhood to another neighborhood, one high school to this high school, navigating between gang culture, what's safe, what's not safe. So I think Chicago played a lot in my life.
And just because you're just exposed to those different angles and people and personalities and stuff. I mean, I'm assuming then coming to the Pacific Northwest, you know, you probably heard of the term the Seattle Freeze.
Oh yes, I've heard it and I felt it.
And you felt it too. So that was probably a shock. I mean, going up from Chicago to here.
Oh yeah, big shock. You know, when you walk, the biggest thing that happened to me, I was walking to the gym, and I saw this brother walking towards me, and I gave him the nod, like, yo, what up, man? And he walked right past me. Like, he saw me. I saw him see me, and then walk right past me. And I said, oh, that must have been a mistake, you know. And then it happened again, you know, the nod. People walk past, and I said, yo, what's happening?
What's happening?
Like, this is you go around the world. No matter where you are in the world, you see another brother or sister, you say, yo, what's up? And they give you the nod. That didn't happen here, and that took me back. I didn't know what to do with it. So yes, the Seattle Freeze is real.
That happened to me yesterday, actually. and I never understood it. I mean, people have different personalities, different experiences and stuff. That makes sense, but a simple nod, I think.
Simple nod. Come on.
You don't even have to say hi.
No, just say yo. That's it. Not even verbal. Just a head nod.
Just what's up. So But anyways, really cool background. Really cool background. Kind of transition into the educator part of you in New York and stuff like that. So you worked as an educator in New York public schools. For almost 2 decades. Almost 20 years. How did that experience shape your approach to education as well as the arts?
Well, very, very interesting. So when I started my career as an educator in New York, it was the 90s, and I was teaching, I was 21 years old, and I was teaching young people that are recently arrived to the U.S. They were 19, 20, 21 themselves. They were still in high school. So I learned a lot about intersectionality, even though that wasn't even a term at that point. I was like, oh, okay, we all are similar in ages. I have this college degree, so I can teach you. But in actuality, we're all digesting the same kind of information on a daily basis. You know, even though streaming services weren't a thing, we all knew who people were, like J-Lo, Shakira, Mark Anthony. That was popular. Big Pun, like that was universal, no matter where we were. So bringing in our common language into schools was easy for me because that's all I knew at that point. I was like, we're about the same age, so let's just talk about it, and connecting it to what we were studying. So that really informed my educational practice for the next 20 plus years. All started in Chicago when my math teacher, Mr. Pickett, taught me juggling. And I never before thought, wait, math and juggling go together. You don't have to be defined or confined by one identity.
Right.
You can be a math teacher and someone that knows circus arts. And so when I walked into schools in New York, I was a hip hop head, I was an actor, but I also loved education. You know, my mom is an educator. My brother, when he graduated from college, became an educator. So it's part of our ecosystem, our ethos, to support the people that don't know and like raise up the next generation. So it was really, really important. And because New York is like such a melting pot of people, you learned a lot. Let's just walk down the street, languages, cultural differences. You learn everything just by living in the city of New York. So it informed my entire being as an educator. I would try something out in one school and try it out at another school, and it'd be divergent outcomes.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, how do I make this universal so that if I want to try something in this environment, it can also work in that environment? What's the common thread? And the common thread was always listening to young people. So when I became more a veteran in my educational practices, it was like the first thing I always said was like, let's listen to the young people. Well, how do you handle behavior? Let's talk to the young people. That's it. Let's talk to the young people. They will tell us the way. So like there's the youth are the truth is a term people say. That is valid for me.
Very true.
That's veritas for sure.
You know, when you talk about education, specifically in New York, the music video that comes to mind is "Gangsta's Paradise" by Cool J.
By Coolio.
By Coolio. And the reason is because it was one of the most emotional and like sad music videos because it's like a bunch of kids in the public school system. I think they're like in high school, whatever. And the white teacher is trying to educate them, but they're just not. They're not getting her, and it's like there's a lyric that goes, "If they can't understand me, how can they reach me?" Where he says something like, you know, she doesn't understand what the other 20 whatever hours outside of school that they're going through at home. If they even have a father figure or something like that. And so I think about that because I'm like, man, you're talking about listening to the young folks, you know, is the way school and the public school system is just kind of like a militarized way where it's like, no, you're going to do this, no matter what happens outside of school. And that causes certain folks to not, especially the black community, to not want to accustom to that type of learning.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to Thomas Jefferson, who in 1787 or so said something to the nature of like, we need to have two distinct educational practices, one for the elite and one for the not so elite, like the workers. And that model of education through Horace Mann in the 1800s has become the same system of education we've adopted for now 200 plus years, where we train people to become automatons, right, to become subservient, to work in automobile or factories, that, you know, especially the industrialization of the 1800s, to work in factories. So education became less about learning and more about get a job, follow rules so that you can go into an assembly line.
Exactly, like a domino effect, like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. And that's an issue because, as we all know, the world is ever changing, right? We're not learning, we're not teaching students how to adapt to AI. We're teaching them that either AI is bad or AI is good. We're not teaching them how to use technology. We're saying no phones in school instead of saying like, well, how can you use your phone in an educational environment?
Right.
Like, how do you make it fun, irrelevant? Young people are on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram and Snapchat. You walk into school, no mention of Snapchat, no mention of Instagram, no mention of TikTok, except don't do it, right? Instead of saying like, well, how can we use this to educational benefit? Anything can become educational. Everything's a tool.
Absolutely.
You know, everything's a tool. Like a pencil's a tool, just like a computer's a tool. How you use it defines you. You can stab someone with a pencil. That doesn't make a pencil wrong. It makes it a tool you use incorrectly. A computer, you can cheat, use the computer. That doesn't make it wrong. That just means you use it not to the means that you want it to be.
Exactly.
So I think we need to learn as an educational system how to adapt and adopt practices that support youth culture, where young people are learning and engaging with society, and how to prepare them better for the new world.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's my parents have a saying something like that, where it's like, don't be addicted to your phone, but it's also how you use that phone.
How you use
know
the
what I mean?
phone,
And pretty
yeah.
much you could use it as a positive tool or negative
Right.
tool to hurt people and hurt
Exactly.
yourself down the line.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the move to Seattle.
Yes.
So you're in the East Coast,
East Coast.
living it up,
Yes.
and then in 2016 you decide to move to
Yes.
Seattle.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about why you made that move and what was that cultural shock like a little bit.
Oh yeah. So I was teaching and acting for all those years. You know, I quit acting at some points and became a full-time teacher. Then I would go back to acting. Then I would quit and go back to full-time teaching. At some point, I said, I'm done with teaching. I was talking to Michael J. Fox and on the Michael J. Fox show, and Wendell Pierce, who was on The Wire, was also on the Michael J. Fox show. And they said something to me that convinced me I was right to follow my path to become an educator. So I left that show, called my friend, and I said, yo, I need a job. He's like, what? Okay, well, you know, you're a teaching artist. You could work. And I said, no, I need a full-time job. I just quit acting. And he says, well, you have no experience except being a teaching artist, and you were a full-time teacher years ago. And I said, just give me a chance. So he gave me a chance, and I started working, building this hip-hop education program. And then my wife at the time was working on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. She was doing costumes for that show. And our two kids were 4 or 5 years old. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. And I said, that's cool. I've got a new job. You know, we've talked about this, of course. I've got a job. You focus with the kids, and I'll keep working on this hip hop stuff. At a certain point, we realized we didn't need to be in New York anymore. You know, she's from Seattle. So we looked at other places to live: Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle. Chicago was on the list very, very shortly because it's too cold. Maggie's like, I ain't going to Chicago. And I couldn't blame her.
Can't handle it, yeah.
Yeah, she was like, I ain't doing this. Like London popped in the list. Like, all right, where are we going to go? So I was presenting at a conference in D.C., and I met this person and I was talking about my hip-hop stuff. And she's like, we need your kind of energy in Seattle. And I said, Seattle? My wife's from Seattle. She's like, really? Would you ever consider moving back? And I said, I would move to Seattle. I've never been, you know, I've only been on vacation. So I'd go there. She's like, oh, okay. So for a year, maybe 2 years, she called and was like, hey, there's a job. Hey, there's a job. Hey, there's a job. And at some point, she's like, hey, I'm leaving my job. Why don't you apply for my job? And I said, oh, okay. And that was to run an organization. And I said, let me try that. So I did, got the job, moved here, not seeing the house we lived in, just moved here. And that's the story. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you said your wife had your former wife then had
Yeah.
connections to Jimmy Fallon, and she was
on
Jimmy
Tonight Show, yeah, with Jimmy Fallon and the Roots, you know. But she was like, she's not Jimmy Fallon's friend,
Right.
to be clear. Like, she was working as a costume designer.
Gotcha.
She worked in TV. She worked in Blue Bloods and Law and Order. Jimmy Fallon was one of the shows that she worked on. Yeah.
That is so, like, I don't know. me it's just like, because like these are people that I always see on YouTube and TV, so I'm like,
Right.
wow. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Was there, I guess, when she said that you needed, or Seattle needs your energy,
Yeah.
did you feel like as soon as you stepped on the scene here, did you feel like, okay, I know what she's talking about?
No. No. At first, when I stepped here, I was trying to get my legs under me. Like, what am I figuring out? You know, our kids one night were like, yo, Dad, there's no black people. Why is everyone white? And then they're like, yo, it's so quiet here. You know, we lived in Brooklyn on Flatbush. So if you've ever been to Brooklyn on Labor Day and the Flatbush West Indian Day Parade, imagine that. It's loud, it's boisterous, it's fun. as a kid, as an adult, as a New Yorker, you get used to that sound. When it disappears, the constant like drum of human beings walking back and forth, of music, of cars honking, of businesses closing and opening, you get used to it. It becomes an everyday thing. When it's gone, it freaked us out.
Yeah.
So that was a huge adjustment for all four of us. Like, it's so quiet here. We couldn't sleep for a while. Like, had to turn on like banging pots and stuff. We
Make
got
your
used,
own noise.
like making our own noise. Like, this has helped me go to sleep. Bang, 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 bang. Okay, now I can rest. Yeah, so it was quite the adjustment. Just the living part. Once I got used to living here and talking to people, my first thing I wanted to do was meet everyone. So anything that was happening, I would try to go attend. An event, a gala, an opening of a museum, an exhibit opening, a show. I just wanted to be out to be around people. As I said, I'm a New Yorker. So I'm a gregarious person. I want to be around human beings. That's how I got my legs under me. And that's how it's like, oh, okay, now I see what she's talking about. There's something about a New York energy that's very fast-paced, very energetic, very affable. We're not always agreeing with you, but we're agreeable, as we say. And that's the kind of energy. People come together around New Yorkers. So I think that's part of it. Yeah.
New York is on my list to visit. Just because,
it's great. It's a great city.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I had so when I graduated this past June,
right,
and one of my best friend's uncle was coming from New York.
Yeah.
And when he came to Bellingham, he didn't even come to Seattle.
Wow.
And he's like, people not only come to the Pacific Northwest to retire, but this is like where dead people are, is what he described it, because of the lack of like energy, and it was just quiet. And Bellingham even more is just more relaxed.
It's very,
a lot of
very
people
relaxed.
go to retire and stuff like that. But I just found that amusing because I was like, I mean, and I thought I was energetic before until I met him.
Oh yeah, nonstop.
You guys are way over 9,000.
Oh, always. We're always on 11. Always on 11. Yeah.
Seriously. Let's transition a little bit into leadership.
Yes.
And specifically in your nonprofit. So you were the former executive director, Third Stone,
that run Bumbershoot. Yeah.
Yes. You also had leadership roles at Mentor.
At Mentor Washington. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into those and that leadership aspect, where that came from, and how like those organizations specifically kind of tied into your personal mission and what you were trying to accomplish. Yeah.
I think it always goes back to my work as an actor and as an educator. So as an actor, I did this one play called Fly about the Tuskegee Airmen. And I played an 18-year-old that joined the Army and was able to fly through to fight in World War II. That play meant a lot to me. I did that play for 10 years, on and off. At a certain point, I aged out. So I started directing that play.
Right.
And when you direct a play, you have to see the entirety of the production from one seat. Lights, sets, acting, costumes, pacing, stage management. So you just develop a sense of like seeing everything. And because you're the director, everyone turns to you. What do we do? It's not like a hierarchical thing. It's more of like, it's your vision. We need your help to see how it all fits together.
Gotcha.
So when I left the acting world into the education world, first as a teacher, it's the same thing. You're in a classroom. You're not the leader of the classroom. You're just understanding how to navigate the different groups, the different situations that happen in educational situations. You turn that into administration, there's nothing different. You're seeing how all the people that work together, development, communications, programs, operations, all contribute to the mission of the organization. So when I started this organization as a part-time after-school coordinator, I saw how things fit together within the entire organization just because of my history as a theater performer, theater practitioner, and an educator. So I quickly moved up in that world to become leadership just because I knew what I was doing. Not from an egocentric way. I was like, oh, I figured this out. I can help. Let me help figure this out. Let me help connect these dots. So that's how I got into my leadership practices, just because people relied on me, because I could see it without a judgment. Like, all right, well, maybe try this. How about this? That's very much from the theater world. Theater practitioners, directors, particularly great directors, never say, do this.
Yeah.
They say, how about this? What if? A lot of what ifs, and to me, that's the key of leadership, is asking questions and not making judgments. Being critical, but not criticizing, right? Listening and also hearing, right? That's the key to being a good leader. So you embody that. Anyone can be a leader as long as you can listen to the people around you and not judge and help guide, not direct, but guide. But guide.
Yeah.
So
And you saw that because you tried that out, and you saw, like, because people are people.
People are people. Yeah.
And anyone who's like, at least me, like when I've had bosses in the past with jobs where they felt like a totalitarian, kind of barking at me, and I performed not as well compared to if someone was like, hey, how about you do this instead? How about, what if you go work there while they work there?
Yes.
And let's see what happens.
Yeah. You have to see the humanity in everyone you work with. Yes.
Exactly.
And that's not always easy.
No.
You know, especially if they are not being humane to each other. You're like, you can do this. I trust you. Try it out, you know? And that trust is a huge thing. You have to build trust in order to make something happen, to have that vulnerability, that accountability that exists within an organization. You have to have trust. And that means you have to be able to, and be willing to fail and let something not succeed, which is the hardest thing for a leader to do, is say, like, well, let's try it out. We may fail. And if we fail, we have to pick ourselves back up again. But I think back to my times as a hip-hop head and the DJ. You know, a DJ has, and this is back before digital, like 2 records, right? You may hit the wrong sound but you have to recover quickly. That's what a DJ does. That's what an educator does. That's what a leader does.
Right.
You may make some mistakes, but guess what? We're all on the dance floor. Let's make it happen. Yeah.
When you're talking about this, I think one of the main key themes that comes to my mind, especially in relation to my journey too,
Right.
And this podcast, is confidence.
Yes.
And I feel like I was watching a video on YouTube where people get confidence and competence kind of mixed up sometimes, where, you know, they're saying, oh, you know, you got to be good at it to be confident. No, well, confidence is just being to try it out, and like you said, being okay with, I might fail at this, but pick yourself up and then be more competent in how it's done.
Yes.
That's kind of how I was seeing it, at least with this podcast, where I was like, let me just start this thing out.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Confident, and as you become more confident, you become more competent.
Exactly.
Because you learn to make mistakes. Confidence is not like egocentricity. It's like, yeah, I can do this. All right, I can do this. And I may make some mistakes, but I'll figure it out because I'm confident in recovering.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bumbershoot.
Yes.
Huge musical festival.
Yes.
Happens on Labor Day weekend in Seattle.
Yes.
Tell me, like, what being an executive director of a nonprofit that operated that?
Yeah.
I mean, that had to have been crazy busy, just people everywhere.
It was insane. When I started, there was nothing. Like, I opened up a bank account. That's how, when I started, there was nothing. Built the foundation of an organization. Applied for 501c3 status. That was a lot of meetings with elected officials to say, like, hey, can we get our status? Working with vendors, working with the education system, because we had an education program, talking to Seattle Center, working with my partners at New Rising Sun to ensure that the entire festival was both accessible, effective, and impactful. There's a lot going on with putting on a festival. You know, I teach a class at Seattle U that's called Venues and Events Management, and a lot of that is just like being ready for not knowing what you're ready for.
Right.
Juggling not just 3 balls, but like 600 balls at the same time. That's putting on a music festival. Bumbershoot, because of his historicity with the city of Seattle and coming back post-pandemic, there's a lot of pressure on all of us in leadership to make this happen, which we did. But it was a great experience, and yes, it was mind-boggling how much time it took. I spent an entire summer at work focusing on this festival, so much so that I was like, I can't do this again until my kids graduate high school.
Wow.
You know, because I need to go back to, I need to see them at some point. I need to see my 2 children.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a lot, but I loved it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you have any favorite music artists that made appearances at Bumbershoot?
Let's see. I loved Pussy Riot. I saw them, and I knew about them, but never heard them before. Blew my mind how great they were. Brittany Howard was fantastic. I loved watching her perform. Matt and Kim are close friends of my brother and sister-in-law, so it was great to see them on stage. This year I saw Cypress Hill. That was magical. Lee Fields was magical. I saw Solange a couple years ago before I was involved with Bumbershoot. That was fantastic. I love music. Like, I love it. You know, it's been in my life since I was born. So anytime I can see live music, I'll go see it. No matter the genre, I love live music. So, yeah.
And speaking of music, hip-hop.
Hip-hop.
I mean, hip-hop has changed
Yes.
over the years. And sadly, you know, you've probably been keeping up with the news, but the whole P. Diddy thing.
Oh,
and
yes.
it's, you know, it doesn't give it a good look, definitely. But
Yeah.
how would you say, I guess, you know, growing up in the East Coast
Yes.
and then coming here like the 90s, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, how would you say the evolution of hip-hop has been? And would you agree with most people in their sentiment of saying hip-hop is actually, the music has been going down because of mumble rap and all that
Because of
stuff?
mumble rap? I think the music has changed.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gone down or up. I think it's just changed. The heydays of hip-hop, you know, it depends on how old you are. You know, because I think the golden era of hip-hop for me was the 1990s, right? Started with Instinctual Rhythms by Tribe Called Quest in 1989. When that album came out, followed by 1990, you had Edutainment by Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, and you had Straight Outta Compton by NWA. To me, those seminal albums launched hip-hop into the stratosphere, because without those albums, Fresh Prince is part of that, Fresh Prince of DJ Jazzy Jeff, without those albums, we would not have the global phenomena that is hip-hop. As you know, I think it's like aging. You know, as a teenager or in your 20s, when hip-hop was in the 90s, you got into your groove. You knew what you were doing. As you get older, tastes change. So when you hit the 2000s, you're different, you know, millennials are coming to their own at that time. Very different from the Gen Xers, like, and the boomers.
Right.
Like, I'm a Gen Xer. So that's a different genre, different feeling towards music. I don't want to say it's bad or good, just different.
Just different.
Just different. And so I think the biggest moment for me was I was teaching a class, and I brought in Talib Kweli. And I'm a huge Talib Kweli fan, huge Black Star fan. I remember seeing them at CBGBs in the 90s and like, yo, this band is amazing. And then they put out Black Star, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
they are amazing.
Yeah.
So when I brought them into class, and the students were like, yo, what is this? Who is the Talib Kweli? And I was like, y'all don't know Talib Kweli? What's the matter for you? And then I realized, wait, why am I trying to push my likes on them, right? Why am I yucking their yums? What are y'all listening to? And so when I started listening to what they were listening to, I had to tune my ear differently. It's like, okay, your focus, like, and especially 2020s and late 2019s, 2010s and 2020s, is less about the lyricism and more about the feeling, the vibe it creates. And I think that's a unique thing, you know, not putting it down, just different from the hip hop I loved. But it's about the vibes that you create. And I was like, all right, if I want to dig into the vibes, how can I bring those vibes into the classroom? What vibes am I trying to appreciate? So I started literally vibing to the music of different, of the younger generation of hip hop artists, and learned a lot. Still, not my favorite, not all of it. Some of it's great. Like, I love Kendrick, I love J. Cole, you know, Joey Badass, Lupe, Ye, when he used Kanye.
Pre-crazy?
Yeah,
Pre-crazy
I
Ye?
love Kanye. Maybe not Ye, but I love Kanye. Jay-Z has a longevity. So I think having that back and forth between the quote unquote older generation and the younger generation keeps us young, keeps us always moving. But I like hip hop in all of its entirety is something I love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of things that my parents bring up even, and a lot of my older cousins and uncles is the whole East Coast versus West Coast beef that was happening. I was born in 2000, so I really didn't get a feel of that, but kind of take us through, like, what was that like, that whole beef and battle, and especially you living in the East Coast and now coming here to the West Coast.
Right. It was a manufactured battle that became very real. And I think it started off as just a discontent between two artists that grew into a discontent between entire coasts. So years later, you can look back and say, what were we arguing about? Like, what's the beef?
Right.
It's all music. It's all black music. And I say that with love, not trying to single out any other discipline or any other identity. But black music is black music, and it's all good. Common said that. So I, growing up, listening to, like, watching that beef unfold in front of me, sometimes it's very hard, you know, especially when you're in company, you know, because I went to college in Georgia. At the height of this beef, maybe preceding this beef. And you saw people from LA, Portland, Seattle come to school with people from New York and Jersey and Philadelphia, and would be at odds with each other just over their taste of music. I remember how much one of my roommate, in fact, was like, yo, check out E40. And I was like, E40? You ain't from New York. I don't want to listen to E40. Like, man, you bugging.
Right.
Listening back, I'm like, okay, what am I missing? It was hard. I'll just say it was hard. And you never knew what was going to pop off.
Yeah.
And I say that wholeheartedly. You never knew what was going to pop off at a club. And when people would be on tour, it would almost singularly be one coast versus another coast.
Wow.
If when Tribe was on tour, Tribe was pretty universal. Everyone loved Tribe. But when Mobb Deep was on tour, it was only East Coast. When Snoop was on tour at Point, well, he's pretty universal then too. But when E40 was on tour, it was all West Coast.
Right.
You never saw the twain mix. What brought us together, honestly, I think, was Outkast. Being from the South.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.
Yes, yes. Because Outkast was not East Coast, it was not West Coast, but it was a vibe. And people were like, all right, well, we can't hate on the South.
And
right?
it seemed like everyone was listening.
Everyone was listening.
them.
Yeah, everyone was like, okay,
everyone
Outkast.
vibe with them.
Yeah. So thankfully for Outkast, that helped bridge the gap between East Coast and West Coast.
Yeah.
And so mad love to Andre, mad love to Big Boy, like Outkast. And Rico Wade, rest in peace, rest in power. Like, you gotta get off of the dungeon.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
How much did that hurt the black community? Because I sometimes find in our community where we are all so talented in our own ways and so skilled in our own ways and in different. Some of us do podcasting, some of us rap, some of us are hoopers, whatever. Michael Jordan. And it seems like sometimes we're all so divided and we're all just so doing our own thing where and beef with each other based off like these little things where how much does that hurt the black community and how much more could we accomplish if we all just were like, let's pull in our resources and our skills together and celebrate each other?
I mean, a lot. But you're talking about something systemic. Like, systemically, we've been divided, right? By race, by language, by skin tone. That was a plan put into action before any of us were born. So when you talk about, like, what to do, like, this East Coast, West Coast beef, it was a beef between individuals that became a larger beef, manufactured by corporations that benefited off of this beef. So what could we do to get together? A lot. What could systemic racism do to keep us apart? Bring in more money. That's what it is. So when artists stopped looking at that and like, yo, why are we beefing with each other? This is a beef ain't between you and me. This is a beef with society's norms that pits us against each other. That's when people are like, yo, we can't talk about that. That's when you started getting more radio play with, you know, quote unquote gangster rap. Yeah. Biggie got popular because it was a nice groove to him talking about drugs and guns and sex. He was also talking about other things too: poverty, unemployment, the struggle of being raised by a single mother. That got put to the side to focus on like more money, more problems. Yeah. Right. Tupac, the same thing. Right. People love Tupac for California, but Brenda's Got a Baby. Come on, that's Dear Mama. Like, those are great, great songs that people in the community love, but does not get as much radio play as his stuff with, like, you know, California, you know, the Outlaws. Right. That gets more radio play because it was gangsta. It was stereotypical. Yeah. That kept us divided. So I don't want to blame the artists. We have a role in it for sure, but systemically we've been pitted against each other. Mm-hmm. So
and that's a sad reality, but that's what we can do, I guess, is like strive to do
Yeah.
what we can and what's in our control.
Yes.
Have these conversations and stuff. But
Exactly.
I'm definitely hopeful for our generation at least.
Hell
and,
yeah.
You know,
Hell yeah.
we're leaning towards the positive side of
Yes.
things. You know.
Yes. Gen Z, tell us what's up, man. Tell us what's up, Gen Z.
I promise we're not always on our phones, man.
I got 2 kids. I know they're
know?
on their phones. Yeah.
I want to transition a little bit to you were a mayoral appointee.
Yes.
And SXSW EDU
Yes.
for education. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of what was that experience like for you?
So I was at South by Southwest EDU maybe 12 years ago. And when I showed up with my boy Jamel, shout out to Jamel, and Michael Wiggins, shout out to Michael Wiggins, Augustina, Siobhan, Nick James, Chin Lo, Asante, we all went down to JR, of course. We all went down to South by Southwest. And at that point, we were the only people of color in most of the conference. And we were talking about hip hop. So it was like, what are they doing here? But they saw what South by saw, and I give them mad credit for that. Like, my career would not be what it is without South by Southwest. I want to say that straight up. What the managers and producers of South by saw was how hip-hop education brought people together from all walks of life, and how we, as educators of color, that were intersectional, you know, that worked with students that were white, worked with students that were brown, worked with students that were black, Spanish-speaking, Hindi-speaking, English-speaking. They said there's something there. And because I was leading that effort, they said, can you join the board of South by Southwest and help us curate more and more things that are different than we used to curate?
Right.
So that was how that came about. And so I became on board with them in 2015 as an advisory board member, and brought not just people of color to the conference, but other conversations as well: technology, disability, music education, arts education, public health interventions. Like, it's all because, not just because of me, but because we as a collective were like, the conversation about education cannot be singular. It has to be all inclusive. So that's how I got on board with South by Southwest. I loved it. I'm still part of the board members. I'll be back in this coming March in 2025.
There we go.
You know,
Okay.
Presenting with my colleague, Dr. Heather Hayes, talking about hip hop and neuroscience. Like, so shout out to Dr. Heather Hayes at University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. We'll be there in March 2025. So that's how that came about. Seattle Arts Commission, I was a part of. When I moved here, maybe 2018, 2019, I was appointed by the mayor. The Arts Commission was founded in 1971, the same year as Bumbershoot. Mayor Oldham said, you know, what the city needs in this state of people. Boeing left, the city was losing money. The mayor was like, we need arts. So he established the Arts Commission to help reinvigorate the art scene in the city. Was why I was here. Like, that's why I moved to Seattle, to invigorate the art scene, not knowing what I was at that point, just wanted to be a part of it. So when I was appointed to the Seattle Arts Commission, it was to represent the people.
Right.
Like, what do we need as artists for the city of Seattle? How can I support communities, not just my community, but all communities?
All people.
So that all art is accessible and available to people of all walks of life, all ages, all abilities, and all intersectionality identities.
Absolutely.
So that meant a lot to me, to be part of the commission.
Super cool stuff.
Yeah.
Super cool stuff. Just this past weekend, I was with a good friend of mine, and she does art therapy.
Okay. Yes.
And so where
yes.
she's like, you know, therapy could be a form of making something, or,
Oh, yeah.
or painting something out, showing your emotions through a painting, or
Yes.
or anything like that. So art is, I myself am starting to get more into that too.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is definitely cool.
Art is health. Art is world.
health.
Art is
Absolutely.
world, man. Yeah.
Even if you can only do stick figure drawings.
That's fine. That's fine. You know, studies actually show that the same cognitive effects happen for an amateur artist as a veteran artist, meaning it lowers your stress levels and increases your happy levels, your dopamine.
Sure.
So just draw those stick figures.
Keep
'cause
doing it.
It helps your brain.
It
helps
does.
your brain. Yeah.
It sure does. James, as we're nearing the end,
Yes.
I want to talk about the TED Talk
Yes.
that you did that I also saw.
Yes.
Why education needs hip hop.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that experience, what that was like, talking in front of hundreds of thousands of people
Yeah.
and singing in front of them.
Yes.
Old Town Road by Lil Nas.
Yes. That came about, I was at a town hall maybe 8 months prior, doing a talk about education and the arts sector. And someone there was like, have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk? And I was like, of course. Who hasn't thought about doing a TED Talk? She's like, would you want to? And I said, well, yeah. It's like, do you have a subject? And I said, yes, of course, hip hop education. She's like, all right, that's new. All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about that for the following year. And I said, all right, cool. So I'm thinking, all right, this is cool. If this happens, that'd be great. If it doesn't happen, I have nothing to lose. 2 months later, she's like, hey, can you do this talk in like 3 months? And I said, 3 months? She's like, yeah, could you do this TED Talk in 3 months? And I said, okay. So I went in, wrote my speech, rehearsed with my coach for 3 months straight. Knew I wanted to bring some theatricality to it. And I was like, yeah, this is great. Coming from an acting background, it was easy for me to be on stage. But getting those, like the rhythms of a speech and a TED Talk was difficult. I had to learn that. Different skill set than being an actor. It was a lot of work. I'm so proud of it. But I loved it. So yeah, it came about, and I was happy to do it. And to me, performing in front of people is easy. I feel very comfortable on stage. So that's not the issue. It's like, how can I get my message across so that it carries on? That was my point. And I'm, big shout out to TEDx for letting me do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a trick to speaking in front of thousands of people?
You are going to be nervous. I've been performing for 30 years. You're going to be nervous. It's okay. Just live in it. Use that fuel to keep you going. Like that's the exciting part about performing, is that it never gets old. Even if you do the same show, like I did that play Fly for 10 years, it never got old. Sure, I got sick of saying the same lines over and over again, but once I'm on stage and the audience is there, it's having a different conversation every night with a new audience. That's magical. Yeah. Like, it's a conversation with people that you don't know. You may see once, you may see 100 times, but that conversation is unique. And, as a person that likes conversations with the people, I love performing. So you just have to enjoy conversations.
Yeah. Live in the moment, soak
Live
it
in the moment, yeah.
And just embrace the fact that you're going to be nervous.
Going to be nervous, yeah.
And sweaty maybe too.
And probably sweaty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, James, we are at the point of the podcast that I like to call the deep end.
Okay.
And for all those viewers that are listening to this who've made it this far, they get the golden nuggets at the end of the advice specifically to the younger generation.
Yes.
So amidst your incredible resume, your decorated resume, all the people you've met, your education, everything that you've taken part in.
Yes.
For someone who's on the come up right now, that wants to take part in their own journey in life.
Yeah.
It could be me, it could be anyone.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them moving forward in life?
I'm going to take it back to hip hop and the 5 elements: emceeing, breaking, DJing, graffiti, knowledge of self. Emceeing, what's your voice? What are you saying? Who are you talking to? Why are you saying it? DJing, what have you not thought of that you can mix up? How can you mix up 2 unlike things? That means as an artist, that means as a person that's not an artist, how do you think differently about the world? Breaking, how do you physically show up? Meaning, how are you standing up for what's right or what's wrong? What are you doing, using your body for? Graffiti, how are you visually expressing yourself? Think about all these things, whether that's on Instagram or IRL. How are you visually expressing yourself? And knowledge of self, to me, the most important is, how do you love yourself? Do you look in the mirror every day and say, I see you, I appreciate you, I'm thankful for you, let's do this. Like, that's how I built my career, by reflecting on that every single day. Why am I doing this? Do I love myself? If I'm not loving myself, can I continue doing this? The answer is no, because there was a time when I was struggling, with some mental wellness, and I couldn't put out anything positive. I just couldn't do anything. So I had to go back, go to therapy, and love myself again before I can produce more work. So I think the first step for any creative, for any person, is to find ways to love themselves. And also, I say this too, also love the people around you. There's a poem by Luis Valdez called En La Kesh, and it says, I'm your other you, or you are my other me. Meaning, like, if I do harm to you, I do harm to myself, and I love you, I also love myself. So I want to embrace that. If you really want to succeed in life, you got to love yourself, you got to love others. That's that. And then one more thing is just do it, like Nike says.
Yeah.
What are you going to do, fail? Who cares? You pick yourself up and do it again. Like, never give up, never stop trying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What a way to close. James, thank you so much, man,
Thank you,
for
man.
joining us.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for tuning into this episode, and stay tuned for more awesome episodes as season 5 rolls on. Till next time, guys. Peace.
Peace.
What is up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. Make sure to click the subscribe, follow button, as well as the bell to get notified on all my new content that is coming out every Wednesday and every other day. And make sure to click that link in the description down below to get access to all my socials and any other platforms that I have my podcast on. And until next time, y'all, peace.